What's up? What's up? So, I want to pay homage to my mother, my mama. With matter of fact, I want to do this. So, since 2022, I started recording my radio show. It was private, and I was just practicing. So the reason why I speak really well is because I was always like creating a show, and I have multiple that just talks about everything from jurisprudence to law to GDP. I feel like I pretty much speak about GDP, state, local, the four corners of law, which is in this territory, where you have the state, which is the providence, the territory, right, and the province, the local municipalities, the local, which ties back into the ecclesiastic because it's the ecclesiastic jurisdictions. So I was recording earlier. I'm gonna finish recording this here and here, right? So we right on cue. That's like number 26, Gaye for Senegal scored the essentially the winning point of the game for the Senegalese, and he wore number 26 in year 26. The Maghreb, Allah Maghreb, the Maghreb. This is the Maghreb. So the Maghreb is where the sun sets. So this is the land over which the sun sets, and that's what Morocco was chanting. Shout out to Speed, man. Oh my God. Shout out to Speed because it's really showing like he's on a higher mission. Like this is then he realizes like how Nipsey said it was God grace. So, shout out to Speed and the ancestors really and I see his mom is with him in the background. That's the most literally is it brought tears to my eyes for real. Like I watched the match and I was watching him live there, and just to see the reaction that he got from the people, that's epic. You know what I mean? And it speaks to world peace. Like all of the nations have to really come together. So Carolina is a part of that empire. This is Carolina, but this is only a snippet of it. So we were talking about the Carolinas being real estate, so this being the lot, and then we said let's look at it on a smaller scale. So that's how you get your macro and microeconomics, because when you zoom out, they get smaller. So if we're closer to it, well, that's the land that we birthed on. So that's Big Bertha, right? So for us as humans, the land is larger. However, when you look at it from a hawk's view, now the land becomes even, you see, more spaced out. And I've had daydreams where, I articulated the dream to where I could go to essentially the gates of the Seven Sisters, right? Which is in the Taurus belt, which is where they say that we traveled from all this time to get here. So I had, and so when you coming from there and you looking down here, that's even smaller because you know where you came from. You know what it looked like. That's how we were able to draw the maps, because we were coming from the Hawks angle. And so with my writing style, I write from the hawk, like the hawk. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. The falcon, the mighty falcon. That's how I know I'm on cue, because it's 26. 26 got the one. He got the 1 point. That's for the center. That's 95. You gotta go down 95 to cross over 26. So that's the year. That's the date. That's the time I arrived, son. Dang. 95. And they scored it at the 95-minute mark. Come on, bro. But what we were, they talking about American football, and I don't even know who playing. I ain't know who playing. They say it's New England and who? The Texans. Okay, I'm going for the Texans. I want Bryce Young to win it. Or what's man? Just let you know, I do not watch football. Really, I don't watch. See that? That's what I'm talking about. That's what we talking. That's what we talking about. See? You see it, the eye? See the eye of the falcon? See it? So it sees from this angle. It sees from this angle. It sees the coast. It sees the coastlines. It sees the mountains. That's the hawk. So I've seen that angle from the top of Sarah. Sarah is so sacred as Big Mama. So now Big Mama is showing you that's the Habakkuk 2. That's why you gotta we got some alarm clocks coming to us. It's coming into our ports. Right. In the north. And then to you. Right. So get the alarm clock. You get the alarm clock. Get the alarm clock. Because while you're this shit, or you get the locks, you get there, you get it for there. So the alarm clock. Get it from DarylQSlavePractices.org/shop. And we doing personalized copies. So a personalized copy would look like something like this. And by the way, speaking of the 26, shout out to Speed, man, for real. This book is 100 years old. It came out in 1926, right? So that's still 1995. You feel me? Because we representing the 95 for the 1926. So this is what personalization looks like. So that's what you get with my author. My author name is a stamp. It's a stamp. Like this. I got Jimmy Durham is a stamp. That's a stamp. That's the same thing with Daryl Q. Slade. It's a stamp. Right? It's a stamp. Now, who is that stamp controlled by? Right? It's the human child of his mother from his father's line. You feel what I'm saying? Around Durham. So, but this is like the Queen Charlotte story. So I look at my mama like Charlotte, and we're gonna get back to the life, because that's where Mecklenburg is at. You feel what I'm saying? So Charlotte comes from Mecklenburg, but then she goes to England. You feel me? That kind of sound like Pocahontas, don't it? That sound like Pocahontas. And so the legacy of that is to restore the relationship between England and Germany. You see what I'm saying? And when you restore that understanding between those two countries, it ties back to Forsyth County, because that's 177 years of today. Forsyth County was established or published or chartered. Let's go with chartered, right? So therefore, but we got to go back to England, because you have to go back to Germany, because the Germans went into London to make this transaction. So now the English has to go back and review this transaction. And then once they review this transaction, England has to come to us, the Carolinians. Do you understand? Because no land could be sold. Do you understand? Literally, that's in the Carolina Charter, which precedes Forsyth County. So in the Carolina Charter, no one could purchase land. You could only parcel it out. And when you parcel it out, is a debt that's attached to that, but there's a debt superior. That's the debt superior is what they call the chosen ones. They know who they are. It's that hawk. They got the Hawkeye view. So you can't fool Q. That's why you gotta get the books, because I write from a hawk's eye view. And speaking of London, I watched the Low London interview with Cam Newton, and they cut Cam's full part out when he eventually said his birthday. So he did say that. However, Cam knows what he's doing. He knew that he probably was the one that clipped it out, because that's how Cam Newton is. He's a quarterback. You feel what I'm saying? So he's always going to win. He's always going to win. Even when you take a loss, he's still going to come back and win. That's just where you got that dog. You got that dog. I got the gorilla. I'm a gorilla. Silverback from the 53rd house. You feel me? And so, man, dang. And so it's 26, so I'm 12. This might be coming up on my 12th year in the fold. Call Quentin. Call Quentin. So that's integrity. I lead by integrity. I had to go become a man first. I had to become a man. How I saw, like, the principles, the achievements that I had to accomplish to become a man. That's, like putting books out, getting degrees. That's my summary. That's for you, mama. In other words, there you go. That's for you, mama. And that's why I cried when I seen what Speed was doing tonight, because I seen his mama. I cried before I knew that his mama was there, because she helped him put the suit on. But just seeing his reaction to the crowd, and to see that his mama was there that whole time. Because if you go back and watch that stream, man, that say everything. Because Speed's father told him that they indigenous to America. You feel me? And if you look at they're saying to the Maghrib, Senegal should be singing that. That's an Arabic singing. La 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 la, ma Maghrib. You see what I'm saying? Man, that should be the mantra. Even for Senegal, even for the Senegalese. You see what I'm saying? Because we the East. Do you understand? This is probably one of my favorite books. A lot of people ponder on why is his name Don Muhammad, and I get a lot of reactions, and the truth behind it is I read this book. So if I didn't read this book, I wouldn't have became Don Muhammad, in other words, because it showed me myself. It showed me my work ethics, right? The principles that the Prophet Muhammad moved on was wisdom, right? And scholarship, right? And harmony and balance. And I would even go to the extent and say resilience. The Prophet was resilient when he got put into exile and everybody counted him out and everybody spoke up against him, and he went into exile, not because they were speaking out against him, but so that he could heal and remember who he was. I saw myself and I read about it, right? And I read it in 2021 straight through, and I picked it up. I couldn't put it down. And this book is passed down. It's not my book. This is my children's book. This was passed down to them. You see what I'm saying? So I was reading it in passing. That's just reality. That's the reality of it. So, going back to the lots, because we teach and we learn in real estate. We have to learn real estate because that's what families are they missing out on. That they going off and they selling these properties and they not getting land, which is the grandest real estate that you can get right now. That's the grandest thing families need is land. They need a base. They need home villages. Restore the villages for the families, Lord. Restore the villages for the families, Lord. So in order for that to happen, before you could go into the land, you got to heal. That's very much important. You got to heal, and that healing comes from isolation. So we're going to have healing camps and healing centers. So before you get your land, that's where you rejoice. You feel what I'm saying? You have stationaries. This is just, do not follow man. Don't follow man. Do not follow man. Walk with the stars. That message comes from a higher power. And see, when I write, I'm obedient because I'm listening to this higher power. I'm accurate about what I pen. What's in my penman is sourced and bubbled in truth. And so we take from the truth and we give you our point of view. So we coming out of the darkness and into the light. That's the age of Aquarius. We coming out of, they say the darkest moment is right before dawn. Right before Don Muhammad. You see what I'm saying? And so now, if it's the darkest moment, Don Muhammad, no, the light is right there. So when my son before he was born, I gathered all the men in my network, all the men, all the fathers, all the future fathers. I gathered them. We had a naming ceremony in the woods, and we walked in silence over a mile, that deep into the forest, and we held this ceremony for my son, and I revealed his name for the first time in the echoes of the, you see. So therefore, this is what we're doing this for. So again, North Carolina, right here is a parcel. This is paper. Look how small it is. So we'll just go with the paper. Okay? This is where you get the concept of paper currency. Because this is not real, that's not gold, that's paper. You feel me? That's not land, it's paper. And so when they brought the charters here, they said, oh yeah, you could sell this on the market. Do you understand? And when you sell that on the market, then that's where you get the mortgages from. Because now you created debt. Feel what I'm saying? But that's debt on paper, not on the land. That is something that we have to really understand. So now it was 13 colonies. So we said it's the coast. It's the coast. And stretching across the lands. So from Florida, Florida would be, where I gotta look this city up because I talked about that the other day. But let me see. Florida. I cannot think of it for no reason. And it's right here. Ocala. Okay, Ocala. Had to see it off of 75. So get 1975. This is the preamble. That's the preamble. That's about Terrell. So my mama birthed me here. I did a 25-year bid straight in there in what they call North Carolina. It took me 25 years to get out. As a matter of fact, my 26th year was celebrated in our indigenous ancient meeting grounds in our ancient metropolis, what they call Chattanooga now. So that's when I started to learn, that I was foreign. They told me that I was. When I went into the banks, they said, you're foreign, because I was from here. But what they didn't know was that they were foreign. Do you understand? They were foreign to us, which is why we were foreign to them, because they not a part of the Shing dynasty. You understand the point I'm making here? So that's on paper. That they're domestic to the paper because they can't sell the land. But you own the land. You are on the land, my brother, and sisters, and mothers, and daughters, and sons. That's all that is. That's all that's here, right? That's all that's on the planet. We can agree to that. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. That's what the four angles. That's who I'm talking to. That's who I'm talking to. Get this book. Get this book. Get Drusilla's book. Get it directly from your local bookstore. Get my books from No More Suits. Only get it from No More Suits or Daryl Q. Slave Practices if you want it authenticated by the real. Get it through there if that's what you want. And then, No More Suits is going to have the signed copies. That's not going to be personalized, but signed. You feel me? And the prices is going up. They are. Because I value my rich, I value my time, I value my family. That's what this is all about. So the 13 colonies, as I was explaining earlier on this snippet, was that the colonies were within the territories. So they were 13 colonies in the 13 territories. And there was 13 for the fact of the mother, and this is where you get the ancient Ethiopian calendar that they go by. This is why they tell you that they are in 2018. Okay? So they're taking time, and they're actually in the future because they knew that 2018 was coming, right? So therefore, it was a mirror. So what you established in 2018, like No More Suits was established in 2018. It now has that 8 years? 8-year experience. So now you take that 8-year experience and you build on it, right? With your credit. That's your credit. And this is how you properly correct your status. See, it's a lot of people that talks about status correction, but you have to show how to get the equity. It's not like the only way you get the equity. Okay, equity is losses. Have you ever heard anybody say debt is losses minus the? Okay, we say is. What's the debt? What's the wealth formula? The balance sheet formula. Assets minus losses. Wow. Assets and losses. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Assets, losses. So you take the assets, which is available in the markets, right? So if you want to buy gold, you can. If you want to buy guns, you can. If you want to buy land, you can. If you want to buy buildings, you can. If you want to buy cars, you can. You have the ability to make that purchase. Then you're going to have losses. So what's the losses? Well, the losses might be energy. It might be sleep. Do you understand? But so when you have losses, your focus should be like how Cam Newton's is getting more assets. So Cam took a loss in the Super Bowl. We're going on, it'd be 10 years. 10 years ago. That Super Bowl was 10 years ago, right? And we had a Super Bowl party in 305. But we wasn't in Miami. We brought the palm trees to Winston. Shit. We brought the palm trees to Salam. We brought it to Salam. You feel me? We brought the palm trees to Jerusalem. Do you understand? In the 305. That's real talk. So the Panthers lost, so that's a loss, but Cam went and got more assets. So you balance that loss. This is what the skirmish between him and Gilly has to be settled on. You feel what I'm saying? I'm like, look at what he's doing. Look at what this brother is doing. Number one, he's alive. Do you understand that? He's alive. Number two, he's living. Right? So we look at, the condemnation and shit. I'm like, man, no. He's taking care of his tribe. It may not be pretty, but at the same time, he's doing it. Welcome. Welcome to 4th and 1, where I always got it done. Feel what I'm saying? Adding back facts by the boatloads before the rising of the sun. I said, name, welcome. No opinions. Only facts come out of my mouth. Man, that's crazy. Dang. That's EST, man. So, what Speed is demonstrating for the world is that this is one Africa, one America. So when they talk about African American, that's what it is, but they're not giving it to us in that perspective. They're not giving the history on Africa and America. Chancellor Williams is. Drusilla Dunjy Houston is. 100 years old. Give her her props. Okay? I will read. I'm going to do a reading. I'm going to do a reading. I'm going to do this. This is for the 1st of January. Because it's technically my birthday the whole month of January. It's technically my birthday the whole month, right? So let's see here. I want to read to you about who Drusilla Dunjy Houston was, because this was 100 years ago, and I'm gonna read it directly how it was written, because that's respect to the author, because authors grow. So like, I wrote African American in the alarm clock, but I'm not gonna write African American in my next novels, because I grew. So now we're gonna be specific of the people who we're describing, and where they're from, and the territories, right? And how they got there, because that's the most important thing. Families settled in these different territories. So again, before we go to Drusilla, because I'm gonna read to you about her life, let's finish this off. 13 times 2 is what? Oh, okay. So it is 250 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed. But when it was signed, there was 13 colonies, right? That was in the territories. All right? So now we're talking about 1853 or 1753. That was before 1776. Okay? So that would be 20 years before, which would be 23 years before, right? Yeah. 2, 3, yeah, 23 years. The Jordan year, that would be 2003, if my math is serving me correctly. So in 2003, you made the 250th year from the transaction of the territory that we call Wachovia. Which was what they say the Lord Proprietor William Granville estate, but the estate came from a descendancy, and the descendancy came from the matriarch. Do you understand? And so that territory that Lord Granville was holding the land for was essentially the ancient estates. And it's a lot of places that you would read about that would tell you that these were the ancient estates of the indigenous people. The people who were here before colonization, before the colonies. The colonies had to go to our kings and our queens in order to get permission to get a grant for the parcel, not the land. That's what this is the principle here. It was the parcel. This is where you get the republic from the parcels. All of the parcels is what you had settlers. They had the settlers who was getting the parcels, and they were granting and passing these parcels down to their children. And this is what we see today. However, the superior is the allodial title, right? Because the allodial title is what was registered before the parcels, right? And we did that from William. We borrowed that from William, who was the king. It don't matter where he was at. That niggas was the king. He was the king because he was coming up with the best strategy. You feel what I'm saying? To run the kingdom on that island. So this comes from William's philosophy, the map, because it was surveyed, and William went out and got his people to get the surveys. This is where you get John Lawson from, because he was English who went to the Carolinas that was already a part of, hold on, wait for it. Come on, Q. Come on, Q. Bro. Man. Ancient and modern Britain. So I want you to look at it. Families. 13 families. Oh. Churches. 13 churches. Cities. 13 cities. However you want to look at it. Do you know what it takes to have a city? You gotta have a board of trustee, and you gotta have an executive board. And the executive board is your secretary and your secretary for the Department of Transportation, your commissioner. Come on. So, families come together, okay? That's essentially what Cam Newton did. That's essentially what all the brothers are out here doing, and they're putting us at the bottom of the bucket for it. Right or wrong, they don't belong at the bottom of the bucket. It's like, no, let them master their life. Let them be the master of their life, and let's have philosophy and strategy on how we can get out of that guild. So now 13 colonies are states or providences, right? The 13 providences had 13 colonies in each providence. All right? However, when you get to North Carolina, we took two. They had 2 colonies in the Carolina Eastern, this is the Middle East. So on the Eastern Shore, we had 2 colonies. Okay? 2 colonies on our Eastern Shore. Carolina stretched to California. Stretched all the way to Cali. Through Memphis. You don't know that Moses was in Memphis? So, when you get these 13 colonies, they mapped out what it was. Okay? So, in Tennessee, where I went when my daughter was born, right, in the Northwest Georgia mountains, was the original in the Amarachi mountain bridges. In the Amarachi mountain range. In the Northwest Georgia mountains is where my daughter was born. In the original Carolina territory. So therefore, everybody from North Carolina to Tennessee to Arkansas to Chickasaw to Oklahoma, you feel what I'm saying? To Colorado, to Nevada, to California are all Carolinian. Straight up and down. From Utah. Do you understand? That's the Moab. That's Moab. That's the Kentucky line. That's literally the Kentucky line. So on the Kentucky line, it stretches across. You feel me? The Kentucky line is the Virginia parallel. So that's the 36th parallel. And you stretch across. That was a part of Carolina. And that's why the Virgin Mary, you had the Mary Virgin to the north, in the middle of the 13 colonies. And then in the 13 districts of the Eastern Empire. Do you understand? And that's the bandwidth to the caliphs. So with that being said, I just want us to be proper when we say Carolina. It's no different from Morocco, right? Morocco, with the Morocco, Carolina was a part of the Moroccan Empire. You see what I'm saying? The Kingdom of Morocco was a part of the Kingdom of the Carolina, the same empire, allied. And this is what Speed is demonstrating without saying it. He's going across and they telling him the Maghreb. This is the Maghreb. Morocco can never lose. Do you understand that principle? So this is very important that I read this. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna start right here. About Drusilla Dunjy Houston. I'm gonna sit down and get comfortable, and I'm gonna read this scholarly, right? I'm gonna read this. Let me see. Let's see if I say here. Yeah, right here. Right here. I like that. I like that. For sure, I like that. So I'm gonna read right here. And this is how we gonna give homage to Drusilla. We gonna keep her alive 100 years later. And she was born in 76, so that's the 13. So that's why it was done in 76, because that was the 13. Everything was aligning with the 13, because the 13 was the great mother. That's the womb. That's the pregnant woman. The pregnant woman is the number 13. That's her backbone and her lines. That's why you got Carolina, the lines, right? So families, instead of arguing about who gets a piece of the cell, come together as a whole. Who gets a piece of the pie? You get the whole, and you figure out how y'all can all hold this one pie. Do you understand? And take this one pie to establish a better transaction to get an asset that would be beneficial to all. Okay, and that's land. Okay, and that's districts. Because when you read another noble South Carolinian, which is a Carolinian, I want to say William Dunjy because I was listening to Taj, the Grandmaster Sheikh Taj, talk about with William Dunjy, how Lincoln was a self-made lawyer. He was a self-made, he didn't go to law school, but he was a lawyer. So, Chancellor Williams is who I'm thinking about. The destruction of black civilization, which you have to understand that black is not an ancient term, but the civilization is. So the people of this, who we call in black, were the descendants, it's as simple as I want to make, of the people of this great ancient civilization. So your mother could be from Morocco and you playing for Senegal, right? So now you have to have an allyship through marriages, right? So I would have married Drusilla Dunjy Houston. So her birthday is on January 20th, 1776. So she would have been 50. This would have been her 50th anniversary plus 100. So she would have been 150. So she's born exactly 100 years after the Declaration of Independence, which was they were denouncing their independence from their superior, okay? But that came with the condition that they maintain that charter. So the charter said that you can only parcel, you cannot. That's why the United States owns no land. Look it up. The United States, if you look on any parcel in any county, in any parish town, in any ecclesiastical jurisdiction, in any federal jurisdiction, nowhere does the United States own land, because they're going by that same charter. This is why you have the Black Panthers arising and coming out the woods, coming out of nowhere now, because they're letting you know that if you are not going to honor that Constitution, then we are ready for war. Period. We're ready for war to protect our land. That's how it's always been. So the Black Panthers is more ancient than what you think. That's the Panther tribe. We had animal tribes. So you had bear tribes, you had panther tribes, you had snake tribes, you had eagle tribes, you had the deer tribes, you had the gorilla tribes. That's why when the gorilla came up to Speed, he felt his energy. He didn't know who he was. They don't have iPhones. Speed should have gave that iPhone 17 to the gorilla. Can the gorilla have an iPhone? Because they got hands like us. So, okay. So I'm reading about Drusilla. Alright? So she would have been 150 years old in 2 days. Okay? And I'm so excited to read her history because I read her book twice. I read it to myself and then I read it to my children, right? In 2022, right? So in the Egyptian calendar, that would have been 2014. Wonderful on the Ethiopian calendar. Wonderful Ethiopian is taking us back to the ancient calendar. So in the ancient calendar, that's where we at. That's how far we are from the reset. That's how many years. So it's like streams, but they're consistent streams and they all have the same time. That's how you have to look at the zodiacs, because the zodiacs came and said we're each going to have our stream in this year base time. Okay? And so we're going to clock all of the years, and then each year, according to the sun and the universe and the galaxy, we're going to create this time cycle. So now we're coming out of the dark age of Aquarius, of Pisces. That's why the Pisces is actually, what you're looking at, when you look at it at its darkest hour, which is before dawn, that's when you are able to actually see the constellation clear. So you'll see that Pisces is dark. It's really dark. It has to be dark in order for you to get the light. And you have to have extreme darkness in order for you to get to see Aquarius, the light in Aquarius. So Aquarius, what Aquarius is doing is so far out. It's so far out, but you can still see the light. So what Aquarius is doing is it's the only man, outside of the Gemini men, it's the only man in the Sagittarius Archer, which is half man, half horse. That's crazy horse. Alright? That's the Sagittarius. That's the ruler of Sagittarius. Right? But the Aquarius is the only full man standing alone. Standing alone. That's the full man standing alone. And by him standing alone, he's standing alone because he lost his mother. So that was the ram that made the sacrifice. The ram sacrifice, it was a female ram. You do know that, right? And she was due to be a matriarch. That's what they don't tell you about the lamb in that story. And she said no, she had a son, the ram did, but she gave her life for the Son of Man. That was what the sacrifice was. And by her giving her life, the son had to restore the matriarchy. Because he knew what it was when she died. Only a son that lost his mother fully understands what the matriarchal dome was. Because they left it and now they lived it and they left it. It was no longer there because the only one that could run it was their mama. So therefore, they tend to have daughters. It's an ancient science to this. Because that's the restoration of Judah. So with that being said, this Drusilla Dunjy Houston could have very much well been my daughter. Let's read about it. And do you understand? And when I say that, she could have too also been my mother. Like I said, mother, father, son, daughter. Mother, father, son, daughter. The daughter is so important because in order to bring the mommy back, you gotta have a daughter. That's the four corners. That's the quarters. 4 quarters make $1. Drusilla Dunjy Houston was born January 20th, 1876 in Myrtle Hall on the grounds of Storer College, a school for freedmen in the Sedona Valley Mission located at Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. I passed through there. It is so beautiful. I was coming back from Pennsylvania and I passed through there. Beautiful. Beautiful. Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. So West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia had to come back together. Because West Virginia and Kentucky were both counties of Virginia. So they had to come back to the mama. That's Virginia. Alright? This is what... Sorry. I have to explain things as I'm reading. Right? Because again, it's the Hawks Eye view. Hawks Eye view. Oh, can't see nip, bro. Damn. This shit for nip, dog. It's 2018. Nip dropped Victory Lap in 2018, bro. You feel me? So bring that back. Let's bring it back. Drusilla Dunjy was born January, and her father, man. Her parents were Reverend John William Dunjy. Dunjy, what, like William Dunjy? Wow. Wonder if they were related. Oh, look at the timelines, bruh. When was the William Dunjy? 1855? So that was 20 years after that? Oh, somebody look into that. Reverend John William Dunjy and... Dang. I didn't even put that together. And Linda Ann Taylor Dunjy. Her father changed the spelling of his name sometime shortly after he began Urban College. Family members reported that Reverend Dunjy was told that only white families... The William Dunjy case was... Man, this is what Taj was talking about. Look at the live House of Reawakening Minds on January 16th, 2026. House of Reawakening Minds. Todd Grand Sheik. It's going to say GS for Grand Sheik. Taj Tariq Bey. And this is... He was talking about what... Look. Listen. Bro, this is crazy. It says Dunjy was told that only white families... Look up the William Dunjy case. His representative was Abraham Lincoln. His lawyer was Abraham Lincoln for William Dunjy. Alright? All Hajj to Taj. All Hajj to Taj. Family members reported that Reverend Dunjy was told that only white families spelled their name Dungy, G-Y, he was told to change the spelling from Dunjy with the GY to Dunjee, Dunjee. Ooh, was that? Oh, so was that the robbery of the estate? It come down to the spelling of that. You do know that, right? Okay. It says that John William Dunjy with the GY was born into slavery on New Kent County, Virginia, plantation in 1833. So, to correct your status through slavery, you have to understand that where you was enslaved at was also a part of your estate, right? Slaves had rights and they had property. Please understand that when you're looking at that. A lot of us are living on plantations today. But we just talking about estate. John William Dunjy was born in New Kent in 1833. 1833. Her mama was born on March 13th, 1847 in Winchester, Virginia, and was one of 10 children. So look at it like the 10 counties, 10 children. All right, she had 10 children. All right. 10 children. Her mother, was one of 10 children, born free on the free on the plantation. Okay? So that means they still had estates because the freeman is the Carolinian in Old Dominion, Virginia. Lydia's mother was reported a slave and a concubine who had 10 children by the slave owner. Like her husband. Now, I have to say this. The slave owner could have been a Negro. Okay? So that's Big Mama that he made it with. So the slave owner could have been from Massachusetts. And he could have been one of them niggas from Massachusetts who could afford to purchase the damn plantation. The parcels. Okay? So this is and he might have been from England. He may have entered at Massachusetts Bay, but entered from England. And he looked just like you and just like me. So he made it with, So that's it. This has been happening for ages. All right? This is why you have plantations like, I give a good example of one, the Magnolia Plantation, going back to like 1670, the 1670s. The family still runs and controls the plantation today, right? Because they had free men living on and amongst the plantation. Therefore, it was people. Therefore, they had transactions. Therefore, there's royalties for the families. So, I just had to make that point. Lydia was born on March 13th, 1847. Okay, we got that. She had 10 children. She was one of 10 children. Dunjy was also, so she was married to the Dunjy, Taylor Dunjy. Okay, all right. She was okay, hold on, let's keep reading. This is honoring the 100-year anniversary of Wonderful Ethiopians, and this is part 2. And I got these in Atlanta because of this book, Ancient and Modern Britain, The Ancient Connections. So I got this book from, actually, I should have it right here in my reach, because where is it at? I was just talking about it. I think I put it over here. Anywho, it's here. Tecumseh and the Prophet is the book that I'm looking for. I was reading about that, and it talked about the Britain having a connection with the American Indian, and it led me to read this because I've already seen the title. So I went to the Madu bookstore and brought all of these books, all of them, like Babylon to Timbuktu. I brought that book and I gave it to my second cousin, right? I gave it to my second cousin, like after I brought it, the day after. But they looked like Stolen Legacy back there. I got Stolen Legacy. I got a whole bunch of books that day, just off of the strength of this. And so Wonderful Ethiopian was that one of those books that I got. And that's when I read it. This was in 2022. And I got my book in the store too, The Alarm Clock. Bismillah. So, I really want The Alarm Clock to be solely purchased in Atlanta in person. We about to do that. These are gonna be, you can only get these copies from Atlanta or from DarylQSlavePractices.org or No More Suits. Those are the certified sites that you can get the alarm clock. So even if you see it on Amazon, do not buy it. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Don't buy it if you see it on Amazon. And that's honoring my mom, because the alarm clock is dedicated to her and my step grandfather Jackie, right? Because it wasn't no steps. You feel me? It's just what it was, you know. It was honor. So, I'm about to continue reading this. I just have to make these pause breaks because this is the ancestors speaking through me. So we honoring Drusilla for this 100 year, the 26, right? I'm a 26er, right? And she was born on the 6th cycle from the 26 to the 76, passing that off for the 50-year torch, all right? So, you know, that's like the 26ers year of atonement. And then the 2-6 is the 8, which is going back to the Egyptian. I keep saying the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian. That's what I got books that talk. Spiritual Warriors or Healers is a good book to talk about our ancient calendar. You can actually live by it, right? In America. Because like the Miss Universe said to Speed, she was like, and she's Miss Universe in my eyes because of what she told Speed, that we all Ethiopian. So that's all Ethiopia. The 7 Asia, the 7 cities of Asia is all Ethiopia. That's what Wonderful Ethiopian talks about. So this is the legacy of where this information is coming from. This is the descendancy. This is who brought it forth. So we honoring Drusilla, right? And it's about to be her birthday. So we're gonna release this on her birthday. Alright? Bet. So, she was the founder. So going back to, so you can also get this from the Madu bookstore. I really challenge you, like if you're in the district, to get my books. Like if you're from Virginia, if you can get to Atlanta, go get the book from Atlanta. Yeah, get it from Atlanta. Or get it on there. That's it. That's the only places. And that goes for my books. That goes for my brother's book. So on and so forth. We want that to be where you get them from, in person. And then we announce more places, but right now that's where we want it to be, in person. Exclusively in Atlanta. I like that. I do. I really do. I like that a lot. Lydia's mother was reported a slave and a concubine who had 10 children by the slave owner. So that means that The slave owner's estate was Drusilla Dunjy Houston's estate, like her husband, and this is what the William Dunjy case was about. Okay, Lydia Dunjy was also a member of the American Baptist Home Missionary Society. She was also the founder now of Dorcas Society, which had the mission of providing clothing and other necessities for blacks living in rural areas. Okay? So now when we talking about blacks, we specifically talking about the nationals. The blacks were the nationals. We were the nationals of the land. We weren't citizens. We were nationals. Okay? And descendants of the land. This is what they're talking about. All right? So when I say black, that's what we're talking about. Let's take black and create our flag. And from blackness, we're going to have light. So we got to have a star. Like, so from the really, blackness is really purple. It's the darkest form of purple. Whatever that form is, that's it. That's the color when we're talking about the black. And then the star. So you can see the stars in supreme darkness. And that's the people from that star. That's what we're talking about. That's it. Could be anywhere. Do you see what I'm saying? But now in this territory, remember, the 13, Virginia is one of the 13. So Carolina had 2 districts, right? North and South. That's the semi-trois. That's the Union. And then you have Virginia. You had the same union with Virginia and Carolina. Okay, that was the crown that we held, was Virginia. The Franks, the kingdom of the Franks. That's why the ancient Carolinians are the Franks. That's the Moravians, right? That's what we talking about here. So Virginia is part of the kingdom of the Franks. So the blacks is the Franks and the Carolinians. That's what we talking about. That's what these are. That's what Speed's father was telling him, that you come from this ancient empire, because that's why they call Michigan New France, the new territories of the Franks. You feel me? So the Meech and them, Black Mafia, is descendants of the Franks, because William was growing up in Michigan. My great-grandfather William was buried in Michigan. That's because he was a Frank. Dunjy was also a member of the American Baptist Home Missionary Society. She was also the founder of Dorcas Society, which provided clothes and other necessities for blacks living in rural areas. Both John William and Lydia Taylor Dunjy were deeply involved in the Baptist Church as evangelists. As American Baptist Missionary Society, they traveled together throughout the South and Southwest, establishing Baptist congregations. All right, that's what the mother and the father was doing. Reverend Dunjy is reported to have started 10 churches. 10 churches, bro. 10 churches. Okay. 10 churches. And is best known for his pioneering evangelical civil rights work with Bethesda Baptist Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Given this background, it's hardly surprising that Dunjy Houston, we got a problem, was deeply influenced by her religious home life, as later evident in numerous religiously oriented writings and community activities. Drusilla Houston was one of the 10 siblings, only 5 whom lived to adulthood. The other survivors include Roscoe Irvin, Blanc, and Ella. Roscoe Irving, Blanc, and Ella. La. Best known of the Dunjy children was Roscoe, editor and owner of the Oklahoma Black Dispatch, and longtime member and activist of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. While sharing a comment, oh man, save the babies. You gotta, man, save the children. While sharing a common intellectual passion, each sibling was nevertheless quite unique. Dunjy Houston described their differences. I remember the bright flash of writ around our home table. One brother always took the political view, the other philosophic, and of course I took the spiritual. Okay, Dunjy family was well placed within the Oklahoma City black middle class, and Dunjy was said to be the most amiable and polished. Now, something that I really want you to point out is that this is the same place that the Cherokee, like I told you, where my daughter was born, was where our tribal council was and where our people was at, where the original Trail of Tears started. Okay? That's where it started at. That's literally where it started, was where my daughter was born. She was born on the Trail of Tears. Okay? She was born where it's the origin of it. And where it started, it went into Oklahoma. So the whole concept of that was like, we had to move the people to different territories to black label them. So when the Cherokee got to Oklahoma, they became black now because they was on the reservation. Originally on the reservation. And then they moved the blacks off the reservations. And then once they got off the reservations, this is what we're reading about here. In these 100-year cycles, after we got off the reservation, then we went into the projects. And once we went into the projects, then you started having the like the Marcus Garveys and the Malcolm X's that was speaking to the people that was in the projects. And then that comes to the Black Panthers, right? The advocates of the sons of Malcolm and them generation that was coming into play. And so this is like my mama and them generation. So I was just talking to my cousin about this, about how the people that was born in the 50s have different morals than the people that was born in the 60s and the 70s, right? Because they were like the ones that were a part of the descendants. They were coming off of the estates. It was all happening. The estates, like how they was talking about the Dunjy. So this is what I want you to understand with the Dunjy case. It stretched out to this, for the simple fact that they said change her name. Like, look at the timeline. Change the name from Dunjy to Dunjee, right? And you take that Dunjee, and that's taking you away from the GY, right? So now you know the Y predates the J. Okay? No. The J. The Y predates the J. So the superior is the Y. That's the Y chromosome. That's why Sanaa Lathan found out that she was a slave. And I would love, I'll put this in the universe. Send this to Sanaa Lathan. And I would love to sit down with her 101 in Aspen, Colorado. I want to sit with her in Aspen, Colorado. And I want to talk to her about the slaves. And I want it to be streamed live. I would love to do that. I want to have a private conversation live with Sanaa Lathan about the slaves. I want to do that. I would love to do that. And because my aunt was offended by her disowning and discrediting the slave name. Don't have nothing to do with white. This is what please study the William Dunjy case. All Hodge took Taj. La 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 la. Ira Maghrib. Maghrib. speed is Maghrib. Maghrib is where you from, my son. That's where you from. Alright? So Dunjy. This is everything to do with that. This is coming off of it. This is the legacy. She spoke. Bruh, y'all gotta go get that this year, bruh. Go get Wonderful Ethiopians. Man, go get Wonderful Ethiopians. Buy it and contribute it to the bank. To the bank. Follow Street Economics. They're doing a book drive in Charlotte. Give those books out to Charlotte. Their goal is 500, but make it 500 million. Let's get 500 million. Donate 500 million books. Let's come together, Carolina, and do 500 million books to society in your city. The society is the city where you socialize. Baby, alright, the Dunjy family was well placed within Oklahoma City, black middle class. They were placed there and was said to be the most amiable and polished. So when Drusilla is talking about, she's talking about the resilience of the Ethiopians. She is. 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. She talks about the endurance of the Ethiopians in North America. Oh man. Dunjy Houston was said to be the most amiable and polished. Dunjy Houston was an accomplished musician who studied music at Northwestern Conservatory of Music in Minnesota, where she trained in classical piano. God, long live Drusilla. In an interview with the recorders for the Federal Writers Project, she reported of having played piano for rich white families at the rate of $3 per night. Despite her earlier plans, now you got to realize that the dollars were, during her time, was backed by gold and silver. Okay, so she could have had $3 gold dollars or $3 silver dollars, right? That was the discount. Silver is the discount price for gold. So you could get the dollar cheaper. That's the same thing like how it takes paper. Right now it's taking 89 pieces of paper to buy $1 silver dollar. But $1 silver dollar is going to take you probably about 46 silver dollars. I'll say 56 silver dollars to purchase one gold dollar. So it's the same thing. Alright? 10. So she had $3 a day, which if we equating that to today's time, $3 today would be $240 a day, which y'all would call $240 is Federal Reserve notes. That's what that came later. So $3 was a lot of money back then. And so what she did, it says that per night, she played piano for $3 a night. Despite earlier plans to become a concert pianist, she gave up the opportunity to appear on the concert circuit in favor of teaching school in Oklahoma. There is no evidence of Dunjy Houston earning a college degree, though her family lived in Vermont and Massachusetts and did attend finishing schools. Nevertheless, regardless of what her education status may have been, it is clear that Dunjy Houston refused to be professionally or socially typecast by college credentials. Later in life, she revealed sentiments about higher education, saying a degree does not mean much in these days, and if you have achieved without one, all the more credit to you for having done so with your own genius. Okay, that's what Abraham Lincoln did. He did not go to school to become a lawyer. You see what I'm saying? And that was who represented her family. He represented their family in court. The Dunjy family. Nevertheless, regardless of her education status, she refused to be that by that no mean. At 15, Dunjy Houston was one of the first teachers. At 15, bro. At 15, she was one of the first teachers, is what I'm reading, employed in the segregated schools of Oklahoma City, where she taught the territory's first black kindergarten class, and later taught elementary grades. She read widely and was keenly interested in the important issues. My son is in kindergarten. She taught kindergarten classes, the first black kindergarten class, and later taught elementary grades. She read widely and was keenly interested in the important issues of the day, particularly Ida B. Wells' crusade to stop lynchings of black Americans, which was just a genocide on the indigenous people of North America, which is us, okay? When she said black Americans. As soon as she began teaching, she and a small later, and that's who was segregated. We were segregated, proudly segregated. The Ethiopians had our own schools. Okay. As soon as she began teaching, she and a small group of teachers founded the Ida B. Wells, did you know, Teachers Association. Wow. Shout out to Drusilla, man. She would later write a screenplay on the horrors of lynching. Dunjy Houston proved to be a devoted teacher who was also very active in the pre-territorial Oklahoma Association of Negro Teachers, and would later with the Oklahoma Board of Education. In 1898, she was 22 years old. Drusilla, in 1898, listen. Drusilla proved to be a devoted teacher who was also very active in the pre-territorial Oklahoma Association of Negro Teachers. It says, I'm going to read it one more time. The pre-territory Oklahoma Association of Negro Teachers, 1892, Winston-Salem State, Slater Industrial, to 1907. And later with the Oklahoma Board of Education. And later with the education. So the Slater Academy became Slater Normal once it went over to the Board of Education in 1899. Okay? So the state, the de facto state, was taking over the education. So when she was teaching that first black kindergarten class, it wasn't a part of the state. But once it became a part of the state, that's when it started to desegregate, if you get the point. Very important facts. Over the years, listen, the black, I'm getting ahead of myself. Saints. In 1898, at 22, Drusilla eloped with Price Houston, a man 20 years her senior, and the progeny of an early Latino Anglo Oklahoma man, 20 years her senior, and the progeny of an early Latino Oklahoma pioneer family. Oh, so he was eloped with Price Houston. Okay, this is where we get Houston from. Is this where it's coming from? Of education. She was eloped by Price Houston, a man 20 years her senior, and progeny of an early Latino, Morris Latin, Anglo Oklahoma pioneer family. The newly married couple settled. Okay, they got married and settled. Remember we talked about settled in McAllister, so they couldn't own the land, but they could hold the land. So they held it in the names of these counties. That's what the United States did, because they badass. That's how the states became independent. And then once they did that, then the corporative states hijacked the republic states. Okay, that's where you got the democracy, the corporative states. Because you can vote people in instead of them coming in, through airship. That's what took over the republic and the province that was holding the land for the American Indians. That's literally what the republic was doing. And then it was stolen by the de facto states. That's what the William Dunjy case. That's why they say Abraham Lincoln was the last president of the republic. See, he understood the law. All right. Self-made lawyer. So anybody that's representing themselves in court, or what they call a cousin German, which is your cousin, nothing less than a cousin German. So nothing less than your cousins from Germany can represent you in court. All right. So Abraham Lincoln might have been connected to this Dunjy family. All right. Again, shout out to Taj, man. It's all happening. So Dunjy Houston, she was eloped by this Prince Houston, where they settled. So a settler is a grantor. So people got granted land and they settled. So when you have a settle, that's a settlement. So essentially, you got this property, you contested it, however you contested it, and then you got it, and now it's your property. Whether you purchased it, whether you put a loan on it, however you did it, you settled. You got a settlement for the land, and this settlement was included land. That's what that is all about. So this is a Negro family that's settled. Let's give Drusilla her proper status. Okay? She's the descendant of Lydia Dunjy, right? The Federal Writer Project. Man, did I say that? In an interview with the recorders of the Federal Writer Project, that's where she reported to have had all of the making the $3 a night as a musician. I just wanted to reiterate that. All right. So this is, now remember, we going to 1926. We talking about the 90s. All right. So let's go back. Let's go up. Let's give her 100 years. So when we talking about 92, it says in 1898, let's go to 1998. Let's bring it in closer. At 22, she was 22 in 98. Drusilla eloped Prince Houston. All right. So it says that the newly married couple settled in McAllister, Oklahoma, where Dunjy Houston opened the McAllister Seminary for girls, a 12-year venture in school building and educating black women and girls, for which she received considerable commendation. Man, bro. So I got a daughter, son. So she did that for the daughters. Do you see what I'm saying? Taxing her administrative duties at the seminary, wrote a weekly column for the Oklahoma Black Dispatch, which she continued for more than a quarter century. Dunjy Houston left the McAllister Seminary in 1917, accepting the position as principal of the Baptist Training School for Women to her black... Oh, wait, hold on. She, for women and girls... Okay, let me read that again. She was the principal of the Baptist Training School for Women and Girls in Sapaloopa, Oklahoma, which time was also temporarily bade farewell to her at which time she said goodbye to the Black Dispatch readers. While Dunjy Houston hoped to parlay... It says, while Dunjy Houston hoped to parlay... Now, parlay is where you get parliament from. This is where you have parliament. You get parliament from parlay. This position into a more expansive means to fulfill her long-standing dream of providing a Baptist education for black women and girls. Her first love continued to be writing for an audience, right? So this is where I'm coming in I became a writer from the next era of the Drusilla. This is 2026. It is not surprising that Dunjy Houston would become a journalist, right? As the Dunjy were an early black newspaper family. Dunjy Houston's father believed in the extraordinary power of the press. Along with Reverend R.A. Fox, established the Harper Ferry Messenger, a post-emancipation newspaper in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. The inaugural edition of the Harper's Ferry Messenger, John William Dunjy, noted that colored people in this section of the country, cut off as they are from other sections of the world by lofty mountain ranges, so not policy, but mountain ranges, have long felt the need for an organ of communication through which a better acquaintance may be formed with the race in all sections of the country. In a view of this, feeling impelled by earnest and often repeated requests coming from many who are deeply interested in the elevation of our long and much oppressed race and the public welfare at large, the above named and well-known ministers have consented to publish a monthly journal at Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, which journal will be known as the Harper Ferry Messenger. The copper color cannot gain a hue and hold onto a true position in the civilized world. What did we just talk about? Independent of the press. It says that we cannot hold a true position of the civilized world without an independent press. So that's what No More Suits has been for the last decade. 6 year, really, 2018 is when it was started. So from 2018 in America to 2018 in Ethiopia, right? Following in their father's footsteps, Brother Irvin and Roscoe took up the call and founded their own newspapers. With such example, Dunjy Houston had ample inspiration for a career in journalism. We created, read my niece's articles. So she's like a modern Drusilla. You feel me? Because she was a journalist. 100 years later, ample inspiration for her career in journalism. Given their relatively close ages, it was not surprising that both Dunjy and her brother eventually pursued the newspaper course together. Roscoe's first venture into journalism occurred when he briefly served as the editor of the Booker T. Searchlight in journalism. Occurred when he briefly served as editor of the Booker T. Searchlight in 1913. This is the year that Winston-Salem was established, the corporation for the corporative. A small newspaper printed in the all-black town of Booker T, Oklahoma. The paper, like the town, was named for the popular post-emancipation racial ideologist and black political leader Booker T. Washington. Like most black papers in the early 20th century, Booker T. Searchlight was short-lived. Booker T's Washington. In 1914, Roscoe Dunjy established the Black Dispatch. In 1914, people. So that's 2014. Okay? To put it in modern times perspective. A weekly newspaper co-managed with Dunjy Houston. Over the years, the Black Dispatch ranked alongside some of the first finest black newspaper in the nation, including the Philadelphia Tribune, the Pennsylvania 1881, the Baltimore Afro-American, Maryland 1892, which is 1992, right? Which is 1981. The Chicago Defender, Illinois 1905, which is 2005, which in 1905, my great grandmother, Odell Slade, was born in 1905. So Sanaa Lathan, I would love to sit with you this year. I mean, it don't have to be this year, but, you know, whenever you have time. If you got time this year, I'll make time to sit with you this year. Put it like that. So send this to Sanaa Lathan. And just purchase a book at Sanaa Slade. No, don't do that, because I just told the people. Just email. Nah, man. Yeah, email. We'll do a video call. I want to do a video call with you. So just email DAREALQSLADE, Slade, like your father's surname. Just the same difference with the Dunjy. So they took the Slade away to take you away from your estate. Alright. The Slades, they come from England. And I can tell you all about it. Alright. Inshallah. Just go watch my videos. Go look at the Slades of Coswell County. No more suits. You feel me? Look at the videos on Daryl Q. Slade practices. This is Daryl Q. Slade in general. The Daryl Q. Slade. Like I said, it's like Jimmy Durham. So, let me see here. Cool. I just wanted to see. 139. We working our way through. This is my reading style. So you getting this information, but you also are getting my stream of conscious. This is my stream of conscious. So 1905, the principal. This is who they was competing with. The first edition of the paper ran in November 1st, 1914. The Black Dispatch quickly became the single most important form through which the Dunjy Houston promoted race work, evolved her racial and gender ideology, and shared her research on ancient African culture and history. Shout out to Speed. Rarely missing a week, Even when she resided outside of Oklahoma, Dunjy Houston contributed numerous editorials to the Black Dispatch, some as lengthy as 3,000 to 4,000 words on a variety of subjects including religion, racial uplift, black culture, education, racial pride, and African history, Ethiopian history. Ethiopian. Wonderful Ethiopian. Speed, that's why they removed the nose. Right? Why did they remove the nose? Nobody knows, because they was taking our estate. That's it. They was robbing our estate. That's where the depthness of it. Because the nose was made of gold. Okay? So this is what she was writing about. Give her respects. I read her book, bruh. And she don't say African American. She don't say, this was written after. It says, I think it's called a Fernbeck in German, where they write about your ecology after you die. That's what this is. A Fernbach. And evident by her editorials and Murad and other writings, Drusilla was a lifelong race woman from 1914 to 1939, was the public voice of the elite racial uplift of women in Oklahoma and the nation, primarily through her articles in the Black Dispatch and her role in the Woman Baptist Convention. As with journalism, Dunjy Houston's father was her inspiration for race work. According to Dunjy Houston, my father was eaten up with the zeal for race service. It is abiding passion of my life and of my brothers and sisters. Referring to Houston's race in a 2020 editorial, Roscoe Dunjy wrote, Miss Houston is one of the most useful women of the race. Out of her ripe experiences, she is enabled to strip truth down to the place where one can grasp it in usable form. When measured against her extensive familiar backdrop of social compassion, community uplift, and social welfare, it is no surprise that from an early age, Drusilla Dunjy Houston devoted her own life to the preservation and uplift of African American society and culture. One cannot overstate the importance of the Black women community leaders in shaping the public opinion of the conducive to racial self-help in the first half of the 20th century. Among these elite women, Dunjy Houston became the compelling intellectual force and organizing power of Oklahoma's unique racial uplift society of women in the 1880s and 1890s. Drusilla Dunjy Houston used every means of her disposal to engage in the state and national rational uplift activities. From her editorial pulpit, the Black Dispatch, she directed the Black families in the home of the Declaration and care and parenting and the financial planning and the education of the elite African American girls. Like I said, she did not use that term, but we know who she's talking about, okay? And women. She also addressed the need for the civic duty toward the needy, the astute. She was talking about the women of all these different tribes of North America. Whether they knew what tribe they came from or not, she was talking to them, right? As well as the need for centering the family and, by the extension, community life around the Baptist Church. In this manner, Dunjy Houston's world was tightly bound as a prescribed code of racial uplift behavior that dictated the content of the community life and promoted an elite class of female community leaders. For nearly 2 decades, this fiercely devoted race woman dedicated herself to the racial uplift activities in Oklahoma and the nation. During some of the most challenging times in Oklahoma history, Dunjy Houston, with the power of the Women Baptist Convention, the influence of the Dunjy family, and her public forum. Now, again, she's coming off of this William Dunjy case. This is the next era. Within and as one of the most influential racial uplift, consequently, historically obscure women in the country. Not only was she filled with the social compassion of necessary work for the compassion for the work as a race woman, she was also a shrewd politician who, through her position at the Black Dispatch and family connections, maintained a keen eye for the changes in the political, social, and economic landscape that might challenge the preeminent social status for which she and other elite Ethiopian women impose and restrict racial uplift culture. When they're making it about race, but like the lady told Speed, the origin of the human race is the Ethiopian. So the whole race starts with the Ethiopian. That was the original race. That was it. That was the first race, and the only race was the human race. Okay? So that's what we're talking about. That's what we are talking about. Once we became aware that we were human, okay, now we began to talk. Now we begin to write. So that's where the race class came from. Drusilla Dunjy talks about it in her book. You gotta go read it, because it's really good. She calls it Kusha Dwipa. When it appeared that the black women's status, including her own within the status of the woman, was threatened within the racial uplift society, Drusilla formulated her own ideas and theories about how to secure racial and community cohesion in a pedagogical method necessary to execute these ideas. She added her ideas and theories to the reality of changing the world around her, its challenges to racial uplift. For instance, Drusilla Dunjy Houston argued the threat to the black women's leadership positions within the racial uplift came from at least three related quarters. Number one, the Oklahoma all-black towns and large urban African-American communities across Oklahoma and the nation were losing internal social and cultural cohesion. Major demographic shifts caused by blacks leaving the farms for the city, the African-American conscript of the World War I left small rural communities within dwindling populations, weak economic support, and unsustainable infrastructures. Number two, family out of migration from rural black communities often forced a migrant African American woman. So the African American woman was these Cherokee women that became, once they were placed into these cities, they were considered, black, African American. This is what this is talking about. Alright, it says, from these rural communities, forced migrant African American women. Now, again, it's like a band-aid on the Cherokee woman is African American. That's what they was being labeled as. To submerge, because again, these were the Cherokee that came from the Trail of Tears that were in Oklahoma. Their traditional community and family leadership roles within the white patriarchal racist, so they flipped the race back on us, right, and gave us this term racism, and sexist structure of the European American urban structures, which is the United States that they're talking about, and the cities they're in, and emergent theories and social constructed race promulgated by the new generation of college-educated anti-racial uplift male leadership and diminish the traditional moral cultural authority of the racial uplift of women. A recent study by John Mark Reed, like Reed County, Tennessee, RIA, contends that Dunjy Houston met these challenges by ideological and political straddling two eras. Reed further contends that Dunjy Houston was both a traditionalist and a modern advocate of racial uplift and a modernist, a proponent of full civil rights who desperately worked to save the influence status of elite black women during a period of unprecedented community dissolution of the African American male ascendancy. By 1917, which was 100 years before the alarm clock, for instance, Dunjy's ideas about voluntary African American, which is the Cherokee, which is the Ethiops, the tribes of the Ethiops, is the Cherokee. That's the Anianwea. That's the real human. That's the real race. Okay, it says voluntary African American segregation and elite African American women leadership roles came into conflict with the emerging racial. Now, Africa and America is both a part of our grand empire. Do you understand? And Europe, right? So North and South America. Okay, when you say American, we'll accept it if you're talking North and South America and Africa. That's the three kings. Come on, man. Don't get me started. The political view of the new generation of the educated African American men after they went to the Department of Education. Like I said, with Winston State. So it was in a republic, but then it got sold to the state that was stolen. In North Carolina, it was in 1866, a year after Lincoln was assassinated. All right. Now, we have to put all this into perspective. While threats to the stability of African American communities, the white power structures increase, as evident by redoubled racial violence, overt discrimination, and the quickening pace of lynchings to genocide. The challenge to the racial uplift authority unleashed by new African American male intelligentsia as epitomized by the new Negro movement and the talented chant in the foreign cause of the individual human right and social integration and human rights increasingly brought into question the status of the powerful black community matrons and their attempts to preserve racial uplift. So you hear about how they said that you can't, Trump has seized people getting grants under the name black. You know how many people out here doing that? They putting these labels on these parcels, and they're saying they're zoning in on these parcels. Remember, 50 acres, so it's 50 divided by 30. That's what we got. 50 divided by 13. So if you got a family similar to how Drusilla's family was set up, can now qualify and classify your children as, you could call them churches. You can establish 13 churches, 13 families, 13 colonies, 13 territories. You feel me? So if you do that on a 50-acre plot and you're giving all 13 lots out, lots, this is a part of the lot. So you have 13 different lots for the 13 different children. So now one child, like Drusilla Dunjy Houston, who was one of 10, right, gets one province. Okay? So she could have the South, and then the North could be open by her infatuation with the Northmen. And then she can marry the Northmen that come from the same blood. So now she got 2 parcels. Your daughter. That's what Charlotte did. That's what Charlotte did. That was what Charlotte did when we was coming from the royalty. Again, look at the timelines. That was 100 years after Charlotte. In fact, North Carolina declared its independence before the Declaration of Independence because Charlotte did it in 1775. So Charlotte had its 250-year revolution in 2025. And you see how the 25s line up? You just add a 0 to it. So we talking about the years of atonement. So Charlotte was declared independent while she was alive, by the way. And that's when North Carolina got it. And then I found an article about how the Bill of Rights, type in North Carolina, Bill of Rights stolen, right? They stole the Bill of Rights, and the people of the Republic of the northern part of the Carolinas and the Mid-East on the coast of the Atlantic, which was the Ethiopian Sea, right? Them Moors that were there, right, established the Republic and had a heavy influence on the Bill of Rights. So the Declaration of Rights of 1776 in the North Carolina Constitution influenced the Bill of Rights in the Declaration, which came later. The amendments came later. The Bill of Rights came after the Constitution. Okay? But it was influenced by North Carolina's Constitution, if you get the point. Because we were the ones that was there joining this republic. We were the first ones to enter into it. That's what it was all about. We wanted to establish this democracy, right? Because we was being done wrong by our family. So we wanted to establish our own independence and purge ourselves from what the royal families was doing, the genocidal acts on their own people. Do you understand? So that's what it was all about. But then when we did that, we lowered our status unknowingly. That's why we were misplaced in Oklahoma. Okay? So instead of adjusting the crown, we became independent from it. Do you get the point? Because this was Roy, again, like I said, William Granville's estate is ancient. Anthony Ashley Cooper's estate is an ancient estate. So the lords of the Carolinas was the holders in due process of the ancient estates, which makes up the nation, by the way. Okay. So Speed is showing you nationhood, internationalism. So, let's continue reading. One cannot overstate the importance of black women community leaders in shaping the public opinion conducive to the racial self-help in the first half of the 20th century. She became an intellectual force, keen eye We read that. You just gotta bear with me. This is dedicated to Drusilla Dunjy Houston. We keeping her alive 100 years later. Her works. You can still get it. Get it from your local. You can get wonderful Ethiopians from Chicago. Get it from the Moors, right? Get it from the Ethiopians. Get the wonderful Ethiopians from the Ethiopians. Period. No matter where you at. Okay? Get it from the Ethiopians. 500 million copies. Let's do it. Let's get it. Let's, for real, let's continue our legacy. Inshallah. Alright, when it appeared that the elite black women's status, including her own, within the racial social uplift was threatened, she formulated her own ideas. We read that. The talented, she saw a way, Drusilla Dunjy saw a way to address these challenges, particularly those arising from the talented 10th. Alright, that's coming from W.E.B. Du Bois, Contemporary Times. Alright, one strategy was to research the history of the African iniquity with a focus on unearthing black women in these civilizations and their roles as the protectors of the family, the community builders, and the leaders. Dunjy Houston's method of sharing this information would be through the publication of a book on ancient African history, where she had forms of disseminate this information. For instance, she was influential in the Women Black Baptist Convention, one of the most powerful black social religious organizations in the country, and in Oklahoma as well. She used her position within the Oklahoma Women's Baptist Convention as a bully pulpit, as did Virginia Broughton, recording secretary of the Baptist Women Convention, who declared in 1902 that blacks must write their own distinctive literature and publish their own side of history in order to contest racist disclosures and instill pride in their own people. Man, given Dunjy Houston's continuous petitions and the emerging conflict between the new Negro movement and racial uplift, she was well on the way of creating such a distinctive literature. We all know that Wonderful Ethiopians series was partly written to refute the false premise of inherent black inferiority, to vindicate the African American ancestry in the arena of the public opinion, and to rekindle the dying flame of a collective race conscious. Along with the issues, Dunjy Houston intended to demonstrate the vital cultural significance of ancient African matriarchy and its direct link to racial uplift work and the elite African American female leader. Regrettably, her scholarship and historical race importance of African matrilineal lines has been repeatedly overlooked by academians and non-academians in discussions of Wonderful Ethiopians. By emphasizing the importance of the African matrilineal line in antiquity, she hoped to stem attacks of traditional racial uplift female leadership, as evidenced by the actions of W.E.B. Du Bois and other male members of the talented 10. While this was not her sole impetus for writing the book, other reasons will be presented later. It was an important driving force behind her publication, Wonderful Ethiopians, and her continuing work on subsequent volumes in the series, at least 3 years before the 1926 publication of Wonderful Ethiopian. So now we're in 2023. So she was born in 1976, and now it's 2023. She coming out with Wonderful Ethiopians, right? So Dunjy Houston alerted her readers that she was writing a book that would fully address African history and the origins of world civilization. In addition to asking her readers to send requests for the book to her home address in Muskogee, Oklahoma, she also offered the book for sale through her column in the Black Dispatch. A limited first edition will be ready, if possible, early in the fall of the book that shall finally readily sell for $5. This was $5 silver. Alright? That's what it was. People for years have been handling in names. Many whites seem to be eager for such information. To those who may be eager for one of the forthcoming volumes, Wonderful Ethiopians, addressed Miss Drusilla Dunjy Houston, General Delaware, Muskogee, for sample pages and the introductory price of the first limited edition. The readings of these 2 volumes, dealing in an interesting way with wonderful civilizations of the world, will make you an educated person head and shoulders above the average man who cannot think soundly of uninformed as the basic facts of history and culture. A year before the work went to the press, she noted, "I shall soon publish a book that ought to help present searchers of the nation in the solving of this problem. What is civilization? And resolving within the race group to come to some decision as to how we want to live." Various writers and scholars have argued that Houston was inspired to write Wonderful Ethiopians by E.B. Du Bois, the Negro. It says, various writers and scholars have argued that Houston was inspired to write Wonderful Ethiopians by W.E.B. Du Bois, the Negro. So that his book, that was the inspiration for it. So like the book Woodhome, I have it somewhere in here that influenced that book, and also Ryan Holiday's The Obstacles the Way influenced the alarm clock. So for her, it was the Negro. However, the date, no scholarship has noted that to date, no scholarship has noted that Drusilla Houston, a full 5 years before the publication of her own book, was actually quite critical of the Negro in its scope, thus calling it into question a direct inspiration from Du Bois. I read Du Bois, his little book, The Negro, and gives hints in almost an apologetic form of what race must have been. As I read, something seemed to reveal there is more. I decided to dedicate my readings to this end for the rest of my life. Houston's words reveal that she was inspired to continue the existing research on ancient Ethiopians because of the limitations in Du Bois' text, rather than starting a new scholarship based on the overt admiration for its contents. As well, there appears to be no evidence demonstrating that she was inspired by Du Bois at the late date 1926. to begin her work on Wonderful Ethiopian series. In fact, she had actually completed 3 volumes in the collection by at least 1919. Give her her respect. Long before she published a copy of the first volume to Du Bois, asking her for the review in the crisis. Asking for a review in the crisis. So she wanted, W.B. Du Bois to write a review on it. In contrast to the earlier academic speculation linking her motives for writing Wonderful Ethiopian mostly to Du Bois, an examination of Dunjy Houston's writing revealed that she had very strong opinions about history, offered several reasons for her lifelong interest in African history. First, in the introduction of Wonderful Ethiopian, Dunjy Houston expressed deep concern about the social conditions that deprive blacks, especially black women, of their full potential. Some of the problems she identified included racial prejudice, right, which she saw as the greatest menace to the world progress, and class clashes because the wealth of the world concentrates more in the hands of the few. The artificiality of modern living. So she was talking about AI. And the devastation of World War I. Secondly, Dunjy Houston was angered by the absence of accurate African history in school and the college curricula. She noted, "My daughter returned from college bringing her sociology book, and I sat down to read it. It is said that the Negro race had always been a backward race, and that we had always been hewers of wood and drawers of water, and I thought to myself, the white text is forced on our children, and we are compelled to send them to school, and if we ever teach them anything else, it will have to come from our own race, the human race." This book, Wonderful Ethiopian, is what's needed. It was this thing that said, I read Wonderful Ethiopians to my children, like how I'm reading right now. So I read it before they sleep. Right now, they're reading about England now, the history of England. And they've read Isaiah, all of the books of Isaiah. They read Samuel 1 and 2. They read Numbers. They read Kings 1 and 2. All of that. They read all of that. We finished Numbers this summer. The historian Wilson Moses, the book of Moses, the Numbers of Moses, described in the late 19th century as the golden age of black nationalism because of the proliferation of the various separatist strategies proffered by black leaders, e.g. separate churches, businesses, and schools. Dunjy, not unlike other black leaders of her era, advocated for black separatism in churches, businesses, schools, and communities, educating the black community about its own history. So for the parents that's sending the kids to school, you have to change your paradigm. You can still send them to that school, but send them there for the experience, because they need an experience. They need to see. They need to get out of the house. So they need to compare and contrast, right? And so the comparison and the contrasting will be when they come home, what you're presenting to them based off of what's being presented to them. That's how you gain wisdom, right? So it's not wrong with sending them there, but send them there for the experience. They're there for the experience. So at the beginning we talked about wealth is losses. Equity is assets minus losses. equals equity. Okay? So you take with your equity and you make time to read. It's the most grandest thing you can do. Read to your own, right? So my own is the people who come from where I come from, who honor and respect the real, which is the Anianwea tribes of the planet. Alright. That's why I was emotional watching Speed. Like, he didn't even know what he was doing. Like, he knew what he was doing. He knows what he's doing on a higher level. But you in the moment, it's overwhelming. But he's restoring the Maghrib. That's what this is all about. And this is the history of it. You gotta know the history. I was talking to my parliament about that. I have a parliament in this house. We have a parliament. So I was talking to the parliament, and they were saying that that's what's wrong with the new generation, is they don't have the history, which is why I'm taking my time to read this. My daughter returned from college. It says, I'm sorry, I keep going back. In contrast to the early academic speculation linking the motives for writing, Wonderful Ethiopians, mostly to Du Bois, an examination of Dunjy Houston's writings revealed that she had very strong opinion about our history and offered several reasons for her lifelong interest in African history. First, the introduction of Wonderful Ethiopian. Drusilla Dunjy expressed deep concern about the social conditions deprived for the black women right and their potential. Some of the problems she identified was racial prejudice, which she saw the greatest. Okay? The classes, because of the wealth of the world, concentrates more and more in the hands of the few. Artificial, modern of living. So you got artificial intelligence. This devastation of World War I. Secondly, Dunjy Houston was angered by the absence of accurate African history in school and college curricula. She noted that my daughter returned from college bringing her sociology book, and I sat down to read it. So this indicates that she had a daughter. It said that the Negro race had always been a backward race, and that we always been hewers of wood and drawers of water. And I thought to myself, wow, this white text is forced on our children. We're compelled to send them to school. If we were to teach them anything, it would have to be how to come out of our own race. If we ever teach them anything else, it would have to be how to come out of our own race. This book, Wonderful Ethiopians, is what we needed and still need to this day. It was this thing that set me to work for searching more for the materials in this book, Wonderful Ethiopian. The historian, okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I had to read it twice, so that way maybe they can reprogram in your head. The historian Wilson Moses described in the late 19th century the golden age of the black nationalism because of the proliferation of separate strategies. Leaders like Dunjy, separate churches and schools. Dunjy, not only like black of her era, advocated for black separatism in the communities. Educating the black community about its own history and culture was deeply entwined with her ideas about black separatism. Moreover, a professional educator, Dunjy Houston was deeply concerned with the educational uplift of young black girls and women, and believed the inclusion of the authentic African history in the black school curricula was essential for achieving this goal. Not unlike Nanny Helen Burroughs. This is a lie, gang. This is a deep ecology. Like, I'm gonna be reading about This is a lot. This is a lot. But it's a lot. So go get the book. Oh, this shit's deep. That's how long it is on Drusilla. You feel me? Damn. So, dang. Dang, bro. That's just the introduction. Damn. All right. So I'm gonna stop there. That was page 12 and 13. I'm gonna finish the sentence. So it says, not unlike Helen Burroughs, who was the first introduced the idea of a national Black Baptist women's school and inspired Black women to that end with the proclamation. This is going to be the national dream realized, and 1 million women in our churches will make us have it. Drusilla Houston, along with other Black women and the Women Baptist Convention of Oklahoma, began plans sometime before 1917 to establish the Baptist Training School in Sapaloola, Oklahoma. Dunjy Houston was adamant and is for a separate school for young Black women and girls, and also had to include coursework on accurate history of African peoples. Immediately after she began her leadership and teaching the position at a new Baptist training school in 1917, she began attacking what she saw as the distorted European American historical canon by substituting a curriculum that corrected the historical record of Africa. Indeed, in 1921, Dunjy Houston had a curriculum bulletin that drew heavily from her research on African history to serve a supplement text for the Negro schools for live literary societies for those parents and leaders who would fix higher ambitions and those whom they would train. All right, I'm gonna stop right there, and I just want to say that she was creating a network before she released her books of people to distribute her books to, and that's what you have to look at what she was saying, but you also got to look at what she established as far as like getting the books out. You know what I'm saying? She was creating pipelines for you to get this information, and now it's no excuse, because back then they didn't have cars, they didn't have planes, they didn't have trains. Well, they did have trains, but that was their mode of transportation. And before that, it was boats and horse and buggies. So, and camels. So yeah, man, shout out to Speed, bro, for real. But yeah, this was 100 years. You know, they doing a 2016 challenge. Let's do the 100-year challenge. What was going on in 1926? 1926 was also the year that the Safe Bus Company was established by 13 men, right? So, and that was in Chalon in 1926. So I challenge you, if you're watching this, to utter out some facts, because you're not going to be able to post pics unless you can find them. You feel what I'm saying? From 1926 of the wonderful Ethiopians. Shalom. Salam.